The Taino were one of the largest indigenous groups in the Caribbean. Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, all of these islands and so many more belonged to the Taino people. Unfortunately, Europeans came and they brutally enslaved, extorted, and murdered these native people. However, the Taino are still with us today. Not just their culture and their language, but the Taino people are still with us.
Greetings, my relatives. I am Nibon Rish Kaiman, also known as Kalan, Cacique, chief of Jamaican Hummingbird Taino tribe. Now I wanted to speak about something very clearly as it relates to the Yamaye Taino of Jamaica.
Wagwan family, welcome back to the Real Watchlist. Today, we're diving into something that might just blow your mind, the lost Taino story. Now, most of us grew up hearing about Africa and Europe when it comes to Jamaica's history. But what if I told you that there's a whole hidden chapter the schools rarely talk about? Stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll see Jamaica in a whole new way. And before we get started, quick favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, it helps this channel grow and keeps these hidden stories alive. Plus, you don't want to miss the next one.
One more thing about Jamaica. Have you ever really wondered who the native Jamaicans are? I mean, the people who were here before Columbus came. Well, according to the history that we know as Jamaicans, the native Jamaicans would look more like this. This is not a perfect example, but according to the history, they would have features similar to this. And they were called the Tainos or the Arawaks. Well, I have found something totally different. History as they teach us tell us that these people, the Tainos, are extinct. They are an extinct race. Due to the cruelty, the slavery, the torture from the colonizers at the time. Well, now I've learned, which I always believed, that the Tainos, the real Tainos, didn't look exactly as they said. So this is how the real native Jamaican look. This is a picture of a Taino, an actual Taino. And this is where the heritage of the maroon came from. So when black people came from Africa, they started mixing with the Taino, giving rise to the Jamaican maroons. Even now with the history books of Jamaica and in schools, they are teaching that the Tainos have been extinct. I don't know, but that bothers me a lot. There are so many Tainos that are mixed in the culture, in the African culture, and in the Jamaican culture in general. A lot of them do not want to identify as Tainos or are scared to be identified as Taino because the history says they are dead. So based on my research, here's a modern picture of the Jamaican Taino. Totally different from what they told us or taught us in school. These two ladies are working very hard to bring their Taino heritage to the forefront of the Jamaican culture. I have been reading their story and it is amazing. I was reading this story of Erica Dennis. I think it's the same lady on the right of the previous picture. When Erica Dennis of South St. Elizabeth was in class at Hampton School in the said parish, a teacher told the students the Tainos in Jamaica were dead. There she was, being told that she, a Jamaican Taino, was extinct. How do you deal with that? But she said because at the time, students could not talk back to teachers, she kept quiet. Yet, she said, she and another Taino girl resisted by calling themselves the Taino girls. In her own family, consisting of a Taino mother and an African father, there were 8 children. In the lot, 5 of them looked distinctively Taino, and one of her sisters embraced her Taino heritage, and an older brother has also believed he was Taino, but the siblings who were born in England are not interested in their Taino identity. See, I'm not making this up. So many truths coming out in the world. Question is, when will we start teaching our children?
Alright, so let's set the stage. Long before the Spanish and long before the English, Jamaica was home to the very Tainos, the island's very fast known people. They weren't just some small tribe passing through. No, this was a whole civilization with language, art, farming, and even games that sound a lot like modern sports. But here's the wild part. Many Jamaicans today don't even realize how much of Taino culture still lives on in everyday life. For example, common foods like cassava, sweet potato, and even paper pot soup trace right back to them. And guess what? Words like hammock, cano, and barbecue? Yup, Taino inventions that spread across the world.
The Taino were one of the largest indigenous groups in the Caribbean. Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, all of these islands and so many more belonged to the Taino people. Unfortunately, Europeans came and they brutally enslaved, extorted, and murdered these native people. However, the Taino are still with us today. Not just their culture and their language, but the Taino people are still with us. A 1565 census showed that there were only 200 Taino people living in Hispaniola, modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And so the Taino were declared extinct. By 1802, there wasn't one single indigenous person on the census records. But the Taino people weren't really extinct. Some natives survived because they ran off and they hid in the mountains. They formed vibrant communities there. Other natives married Europeans, and when they had children with the Europeans, were their children not Taino? Another phenomenon was that in 1533, when the Spanish monarchy decided to grant the native people freedom, a lot of the Spanish people didn't want to free their enslaved Tainos, and so they just marked them off on the census as African, because don't forget, that's when they started to replace Taino labor with black bodies from Africa. Today, historians call this a paper genocide. The Taino people disappeared on paper because the Europeans stopped counting them in their census. But the culture, the history, the identity of the Taino people persisted. Today, many of the Taino people are mixed with Spanish, African, and other cultural groups, but they are still fighting to have their ancestry recognized. In 2018, researchers compared the DNA from a 1,000-year-old tooth found in the Bahamas to the DNA of Puerto Ricans, and they found that 61% of Puerto Ricans carried the Native American mitochondrial DNA.
Now, let that sink in for a second. A people that many think are completely lost are still living through the very words Jamaicans use and the food they eat. But here's the heartbreaking part. When the Spanish arrived in 1494, the Tainos were almost wiped out within decades from disease, slavery, and war. That's why most history books barely mention them. It's like they vanished, but did they really? Some historians argue that the Taino spirit never disappeared. It blended, mixed in with African culture, with Europe churches, and became part of what we call Jamaica today. So when you hear that laughter, that rhythm, that natural creativity, it's not just African, it's not just Europe. It's also the echo of the Taino people.
Nibon Rish Kaimandiri, Kasike Yukayeki Yamaye Wanidaka. Greetings, my relatives. I am Nibon Rish Kaiman, also known as Kalan, Cacique, Chief of Jamaican Hummingbird Taino tribe. Now I wanted to speak about something very clearly as it relates to the Yamaye Taino of Jamaica. We acknowledge our European, African, and indigenous ancestry. We are not Hebrew Israelites. We are not a part of the Abo movement as it relates to African Americans that claim that transatlantic slavery happened in reverse, or it did not happen at all, that claim that all of the people indigenous to the Americas are melanated people, that call the indigenous Native Americans descendants of Mongoloid immigrants. We are not a part of that movement. We acknowledge all our ancestors did since 1492. We acknowledge our grandmothers and great-grandmothers that carried within them this bloodline of our indigenous heritage, folklore, traditions, and ways. We acknowledge the truth seekers. We acknowledge the Maroons, the Cimarron, the Saramabo, which is the original indigenous term for the flight of an arrow. Or people of our tribe are indigenous people who carry African, European, and indigenous bloodlines that exist today in Jamaica. We also include Maroons who have indigenous ancestry as well, indigenous traditions and ways and customs as well, retention from Africa and from here, our people. I want to make that clear. Because of the color of my skin, it has been said recently, not just for myself, but others, we have been associated with these movements that are taking place in the United States of America. So this message is to be very clear. Speaking as the chief of the Yamaye Taino, for the Yamaye Taino people, that we come in many different shades, many different complexions. But what is important is not even the bloodline, but our spirit. That we walk that indigenous way, we walk that red road. So,
And I don't know about you, but what makes Jamaica even more powerful to me? Because it means this island's roots run way deeper than most people think. Now, family, if this is blowing your mind even a little, stop right now and hit subscribe. Seriously, it only takes 1 second, but it helps me keep sharing these stories. And you joining the family keeps Jamaica's hidden history alive. So go ahead, subscribe, and drop a comment. Did you already know about the Tainos, or is this news to you? I want to hear from you.
We're the Tainos, and we were here first in Jamaica. We arrived from South America around 600 to 150 AD, and we named the island Shaimaka, safe, land of wood and water.
At the end of the day, Jamaica isn't just reggae, beaches, and vibes. It's layers of history that shaped one of the strongest cultures in the world. The Taino story reminds us that even when a people are almost erased, the spirit can live on through language, food, and culture. That is why I say Jamaica is more than an island, it's a legacy. Thanks for rocking with me today on the Real Watchlist. Remember, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video so more people can discover Jamaica's hidden roots. Until the next one, big up yourself, more blessings and love.